The race to lead the 11th largest city in the United States continues. 6 candidates set out to be the next mayor of Austin. In November, voters narrowed that poll down to 2. Realtor and 5-term state representative Celia, who has served in the Texas House of Representatives since 2014.
I'm not running for my ego or for any resume building or any other future political opportunity. I'm running to make sure that the working class people in Austin know that their mayor cares for them and wants to make significant change.
And Kirk, who served as Austin's mayor from 1997 until 2001, then represented the city in the state Senate from 2007 until 2020.
People want somebody in that office that knows that it's time to quit messing around on the basics of what we need, whether it's housing or crime or homeless or traffic. We need somebody that has a proven record of leadership.
Last month, Israel clinched the most votes, but fell short of the 50% needed to sit at the dais. So now it's the battle between 2 longtime lawmakers to determine whose vision is right for Austin.
This race is not about nostalgia. This race is about who can afford to live here and who gets to decide. I have the experience in the legislature and on several boards and commissions at the local level, and I have the lived experience and the heart to say that this city should be welcoming people in instead of pushing them out.
Austin needs to have a leader that has a proven track record and has a positive vision of the future that is inclusive, that is positive, and that is able to bring about change and get the big things done.
Tonight, they make their case to you to vote Texas. Live from the KVUE News studio in Austin, Texas, this is the Austin mayoral runoff debate. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the KVUE News Austin mayoral runoff debate. I'm KVUE's managing editor of political content, Ashley Godot, and tonight I will serve as your moderator. Let's go over the rules for tonight's debate. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question, along with 30 seconds for rebuttal or response. And the candidates will each have 2 minutes to make a closing statement, their last words to you, the voters, about why you should elect them. With that, we will begin. We want to start with an opening question directed at each specific candidate. Our first question of the night is going to go to State Representative Israel. Representative, improving Austin's transportation system is a central part of your campaign, and you've said creating a more robust public transportation system will benefit not only the people taking it, but those who prefer to drive. Your phrase throughout this campaign has been, people are not anti-transit, they're anti-inefficiency. Realizing that building out Project Connect will take years. Tell us what is one thing you would do in the first 3 months in office to make public transit more efficient.
It means being a close and connected ally with the Austin the Transportation Partnership, which is the nonprofit that's been created to watch those dollars. I completely understand that those who elected us and those who voted on this in 2020 want to make sure that it is done efficiently and effectively. So it means frequent and constant attention with that group in particular. I was raised on the bus, grew up on the bus here at the University of Texas, and as a young professional, I'm the only person in this race with a lived experience around transit, and I'm anxious to get started, and I'm very, very eager to make sure that Project Connect is a system that befits the 11th largest city in the country.
Okay. Mr. Watson, time for your question. The city of Austin spent nearly a decade and millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars in an attempt to rewrite the Land Development Code, Code Next, and it failed. Still, nearly every candidate running for mayor or council this election cycle has said the Land Development Code needs to be revised. Now, you've suggested creating building rules for each council district, an idea that got a bit of backlash from people who say districts would be able to code themselves out of low-income or affordable housing projects and mandates. Do you still think district-specific building rules are a good idea for Austin?
Well, the reason people have said that is because it got mischaracterized early on. The reason we went through all that millions of dollars and all that time is because City Hall made it a one-size-fits-all sort of approach and made it an all or nothing outcome. It was Code Next or nothing. And so even to the point of removing people's rights to protest until the courts told them you can't do that. So what happened was it was an all or nothing, and we ended up with nothing. What I have suggested is that since we have single member districts, one of the things that we ought to do is we ought to ask those districts, how do you see building more housing? There would be a baseline across the entire city. No one could opt out, as you suggest, or as implicit in that question. You can't opt out of it, but we go to those districts that represent neighborhoods and communities of interest and say, how best do we get more housing in your district so that we can meet that baseline, that blueprint, if you will, and get more housing on the ground?
Rebuttal.
Yeah, Ashley, Kirk knows I disagree with this policy, and I think what strikes me is that it is exacerbating more review, more delay, and it assumes that we will always have a pro-housing 10 members who will say yes to every opportunity. To me, it's promoting and exacerbating the divisions that are in the city to say, I don't want to take your bonuses or whatever Kirk would propose, but I'm going to move forward. And in the midst of Project Connect, we have to have more uniform throughput and density where density is appropriate. And I disagree that this plan is the way to do that.
Response.
Sure. That is the argument that you get at City Hall and why we went a decade with no change. I've said many times, and Representative Israel has heard me say it many times, that Project Connect was more than just a transit foundation. It is also a housing foundation. And my proposal says that if we want to do something, we want to pass an ordinance that applies citywide, it applies citywide. We need to build out those transit corridors so that we have lots of housing in those areas. But we can't continue doing the same old thing.
Right. This next set of questions is for both of the candidates. Now, while you both earned thousands of votes in the general election, more than 229,000 between the two of you, almost 1 in 5 Austin voters cast their ballots for the lone conservative in this race, Jennifer Verdon. We realize the city council is a nonpartisan body, but as the sole citywide elected official sitting on a council with just one Republican member, how will you represent the interests of Republican and conservative Austinites? And Representative, we'll start with you.
I have a reputation in the House of working with my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues to work in the best interests. So this is an opportunity for us we're all stuck in traffic together regardless of our partisan affiliation. We are all feeling the rising cost of housing and rent regardless of our party affiliation. And I have that kind of reputation in the House, and I will bring that forth as mayor of the city.
I've always had a good reputation for being able to develop consensus and bring people together. Back when I was chair of the Texas Air Control Board, there were 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats on that air control board, and we were able to find consensus and have unanimous decisions. I was able in the Senate to have a highly successful Senate career by building the relationships with Democrats and Republicans and finding ways to listen. One of the things that we need to do at City Hall in order to address the basics that we're failing to address is listen to everyone, get the input, and then put it into play. Too often we start with a division and we then exacerbate that division. We're going to have to come up with better ways to hear each other, and then somebody that has the proven experience of actually bringing people together.
Okay. Our next question. Last month, Austin voters approved the largest bond in the city's history, $350 million to purchase land, build homes for low and moderate income Austinites, and complete repairs to keep Austinites in their homes. If you're elected, what is your top priority for how to spend those dollars? Mr. Watson, we'll start with you.
Well, there's a lot that needs to be done in that regard, and it's part of what's going on at City Hall right now where we don't take care of the basics the way we should, including in the area of housing. But if you ask, as you did, the top priority, what I would look to do is use some of that money as a top priority to go into partnerships with some of the private development that's going on. One of the things that's happening, even with incentives, is we're being able to get quote affordable housing that hits the 80 to 100% of median family income, but we're not getting it deeply affordable at 20% and 30%, and so people are having to leave. Part of the problem with that is we need to be providing more money and partnership where you can leverage that money and get a return. That way we could have even more affordability and more of it. And there's a lot of other priorities in there, but that would be my first priority.
Okay. Representative.
There are some tectonic plates happening in our community right now. The cost of housing, the pressure that's on us, Project Connect. I would love to look at a public-private opportunity to say to that 1980s commercial building that has lived out its usefulness. They're building new commercial buildings, and because of the pandemic, we've learned how to work remotely. We have to be more thoughtful with these pieces of opportunity in the heart of the city. As I've said often, it's not equitable or just to me that we just say, well, we're going to push you out to the eastern edge of town and good luck. It's not equity that we ask the nurse to dress our wounds in the heart of the city and then go home at night to Bastrop. So I would love to make sure that we're putting focused energy on those transformational opportunities to say we're going to build row houses, we're going to put a child care center and a pocket park on it. That's going to be teacher housing, or bus driver housing, and it's in the heart of the city.
So when we're talking about those bonds, the city still has not spent all of the affordable housing bond money that voters approved in 2018 or even 2013. And the city has fallen short of the solar risk goals that it sets on how to spend those dollars. So should the city be spending bond dollars sooner, and how will you ensure that those dollars are spent efficiently? And Representative, we'll start with you.
When I started this campaign in January, Ashley, I said, without listening to a focus group, I said every week in an Israel administration will be Housing and Affordability Week. I have a reputation in the House of Representatives as being tenacious and focused. This is the challenge of this city, and every great American city right now is going through this challenge. So it's going to take tenacity. It's going to take asking that second and third question of the city staff. This is not about me. I've often said this is about a movement around housing and affordability. I think that's why I got the most votes on election night, is because I'm leading with this. And people know that woman is on a mission.
Mr. Watson.
The question was, what would we do to make sure that the money is spent? And
so should the city be spending bond dollars sooner?
Right.
And how will you ensure that the money is
well, the best way to ensure that, and first of all, this is a good example of what I've been saying about how we don't take care of the basics. Here we go to the taxpayers, we set a problem, a challenge, housing, which is in fact a challenge. We have a bond election, and then we're not moving with the immediacy that this emergency demands. One of the best ways to do that, I believe, is going to be to have accountability sessions when it comes to bond elections. We need to get back to letting the taxpayer know on like a running 5-year timeline where the money is being spent and where it's not being spent, so that the taxpayers can know what's going on and we can keep the pressure on. And we also have to demand of staff that they're bringing us the projects in a timely fashion so that we can get moving with them.
Actually, to elaborate, we don't have the time to do thought sessions and sunset reviews. I understand where Kirk is coming from, but as the mayor, you don't get to be the queen. You get to run the meetings, and we will have a standing item as Mayor Israel to say, what is every item on this agenda? How is it impacting housing, and how is it impacting affordability? Fees, for example, that end up with the end user and that are passed through. We need to have these conversations up front, quickly and urgently.
And what I want to be clear about what I was saying. We need to have accountability so that the taxpayer knows what we're doing, what we're not doing, and why. And that's why I say we need to have accountability sessions. We're going to be moving with the money. One of the things that I can commit to is that we will be putting the money where we need to meet this emergency. But we force that to happen by making sure that the taxpayers know what's not going on and what is going on so that they have a say.
As you both are well aware, the $7.1 billion Austin voters approved to build out Project Connect is not going to be enough money to build out the plan. Voters were told they would get 2 light rails, a downtown tunnel, several new bus routes, park and rides, and funding for housing. Now, leaders are trying to figure out what has to be cut from the plan. What section of the project would you eliminate, Mr. Watson?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that the housing part of that I see as a separate part. And so that should not be part of the discussion about where Project Connect is. We need to make sure that we're not displacing people and that money gets used for what the voters voted for. I consider that to be a separate item. But what we need to do is we need to focus, I think, probably first on the tunnels, and because they make up such a huge part of the cost. We need to focus on whether or not we need those tunnels, and if we do need them, if there's no way to get around them from an engineering standpoint in order to achieve the goals that we want to achieve, then we need to figure out what they are, skinny them down, make sure that we're not overspending. We have two variables. One is the asset, and we're going to have to look at what gets cut out of that, and that would be the first thing I would look at. And the second is time, and we need to tell the taxpayers within the first 90 days, as you suggested in that question, what we're going to do in terms of time.
Representative, what section of the project would you eliminate?
Project Connect, I'm excited about Project Connect. The timing that we're running across is that we are about to enter what is a standard 30% review. So the next mayor and council, along with Capital Metro, have got to figure out exactly where we stand with that 30% review. The tunnels are expensive. The real estate is expensive. I wish we had passed this in 2000 when the real estate wasn't as expensive, but the need still remains. So we have to make adjustments, and perhaps it might take us longer to complete the vision, but we owe it to the taxpayers to complete that vision and be good stewards of the dollars and the trust that they put in us. It's a matter of our environment, and it's a matter of equity. To me, transit is freedom. Transit is an opportunity to say yes to that bus for a couple of days a week, if nothing else.
So just to follow up, because you didn't list something specifically that you want to look at to eliminate, how are you going to get the money for it?
I learned a long time ago that although I am a realtor who has been engaged with transit advocacy groups over the course of many, many years, when I worked for an engineering firm who did transit, that I might be a realtor with opinions on transit and be very pro-transit, but we've got to listen to the transportation engineers. So I think it's premature to suggest what we can and cannot do until we hit that 30% mark. It's a standard marker that any big project has to contend with, and we will have a full and transparent accounting at that time.
TxDOT is preparing to overhaul I-35 through Austin in an effort to add capacity and improve safety. Now, while the mayor will have limited say on the project, what is your vision for I-35? We'll begin with you.
My vision is that it is an equitable project, and that means it is buried, it is capped. My vision is less stitches and a cap. Councilmember Vela has proposed a different version of it. As someone who's been on the Transportation Committee in the Texas House of Representatives, I have become comfortable with challenging TxDOT engineers on what they're doing. The current plan, which is mimicking the Katy Freeway, more lanes without promoting transit, without promoting the technology that we need, is a waste of money. So I want to move forward with it, but we can't do it at the expense of the taxpayer dollar and squander it, especially when what the TxDOT plan is not congruent with what the community has said they want. As the mayor, we owe it to those whose homes are going to get mowed down and businesses are going to get mowed down. We owe it to challenge those TxDOT engineers who are coming out with new versions of I-35, knocking down a brand new apartment complex that was built for affordable housing just 2 years ago. It's not well thought out, and I challenge TxDOT at this moment in time.
Mr. Watson.
My vision has really four parts to it. One is it's a bad road, functioning as a bad road. Traffic, we all know the congestion on I-35, and about 80% of the cars that are on I-35 going through central Austin originated in Austin and the Austin area. My vision is that we do the things that we need to do in order to make it operate better as a road. Things like managed lanes, so that you'll be able to have cars moving easier, both on the lanes, the current type lanes, and on the new lanes. Second is it needs to be better for transit. And again, that's something that the managed lanes can help us with, because what the managed lanes will then do is, like on Mopac, where we have that managed lane, you can use rapid bus better. The third thing that I would say it needs to have is we need to make it be something that is safer. We have to have greater safety. It's a deadly road. And then the final thing is it needs to be something that benefits Austin by being better, looking better, having caps, that sort of thing. And we can do all of that, I think.
Okay. You both have committed to enforcing the homeless camping ban that voters passed and the state mandated, while also recognizing that you can't just start clearing out camps on your first day in office. So what is the first tangible thing that has to happen? I'm not talking about a meeting with stakeholders. I'm talking about what is the first action step that has to happen for you to start enforcing the camping ban? Mr. Watson, we'll start.
Well, I think ultimately, and we're going to have places where you can send people. So the first tangible step needs to be for us to get out of the habit we've got at City Hall of all or nothing. You can camp anywhere you want to camp, any time of day with no responsibility, or permanent supportive housing, because we have to enforce the camping ban. So we're going to have to figure out where you can put some sanctioned campsites. We're going to have to put into place more non-congregate shelters where people that don't want to be congregated together have the ability to be in shelters. And those would be two of the very first things that need to occur, or you're not going to, it's impossible to enforce a camping ban when you have not done the work necessary to have a place for people to go.
This speaks to my policy around housing and affordability, Ashley. I want more kinds of housing, not just for that young software developer or that teacher or the nurse. I want housing for our unhoused neighbors who do not have a dignified place to be cared for. And sometimes they need a social worker, sometimes they need a healthcare professional. We have some amazing nonprofit partners here in Austin that are ready to have a partner with the city of Austin. And I know it might sound trite, but sometimes they're ready to build something that is a supportive housing, and the city of Austin won't tell them whether or not it's going to take 2 months or a year to move the damn light poles. This speaks to the fact that I have the experience at the development review process. I've helped my clients as they are building homes, and this speaks to the dysfunction around the permitting office, not just for all kinds of housing, but also for the supportive housing that our nonprofit partners like Caritas and Family Elder Care want to build. They need a good partner with us, and I intend to be that good partner with them.
Okay. Austin Police Department is struggling to keep officers and fill vacancies. Even with 2 cadet classes graduating just last month, the department was still on pace to have 215 vacancies. Not only are there not enough police officers, there are not enough 911 call takers. 46 911 call taker vacancies, 20 police dispatcher vacancies. The city has funded the position, so there's money to hire the folks, just not people to do the job. How are you as mayor going to address this very critical public safety need? Representative.
You're absolutely right, Ashley. It is the #1 responsibility of any city is to make sure that our residents feel safe regardless of zip code, regardless of status in life. We've got to make sure that they are that our HR department is moving swiftly and creatively to hire up. I have a public safety plan, stated public safety plan, and it calls for fully funding, fully compensating, and having police with the appropriate amount of oversight to hold them accountable. I've served on the police monitor board, and my family has had that experience of having to call 911. I understand the urgency. We have gaps in every part of the city. 911 call operators, development review, police officers. So it's got to be something that we move forward with urgently, but it's throughout the city.
So you mentioned funding, the positions are funded. Do you think they need more money?
Well, we're in the midst of negotiating a contract. So part of this is getting the contract done so that for those who they want that reassurance that the city council is going to be a good partner with them, speaking of partnerships. So we got to make sure that we do a contract that says to them, we do value you, here's how much we value you. Our police force is well compensated. That will help. But one of my concerns is that we have police officers that are really senior that are leaving the force. I don't want them to leave. I want them to be that good coach for that young cop who just got out of training to say, you are a guardian, not a warrior. Let me help you be a better cop.
Mr. Watson.
Sure, public safety, this is another area where we're not taking care of basics. And we can talk about fire, and we can talk about EMS as well. And I'm pleased that I've been endorsed by the Firefighters and EMS Association. But with regard to policing, there are 2 or 3 things that need to happen almost immediately. One is we need to retain the police officers that we have there. And that may, in fact, require more money because we're going to want to incentivize them to stay. Second, we need to do a better job in recruiting and being able to have cadet classes, and we're behind. The city of Austin doesn't have the facilities that a city this size should have in order to be able to do the kind of training, and that makes a difference. And then the third, and that may cost some money as well, but we need to work with philanthropy and others to see if we can't get better facilities so we can have larger and more cadet classes. And then the third thing I would say is we must get a police contract. That is that may be the key factor in us being able to get more police officers.
We talked about recruiting and filling those positions, but the relationship between the Austin City Council, the community, and the police department is fractured. So while there are calls to reimagine policing, we know the response times are slower, the crime rate for certain offenses is increasing. How are you going to balance the safety needs of the city with improving the culture at APD and holding officers accountable for misconduct, Mr. Watson?
Well, you have to have a plan that will do that. And we got ourselves into a problem in the city because we created a binary choice between being able to have police officers and have a just system of policing. We can have a just system of policing by doing a good job with how we recruit and who we recruit, training that involves also the community being involved in that. Supervision is a key part of it, and ultimately having a very transparent and effective system of accountability. But I want to say it again, that's not binary with having a police department that is fully staffed and that you show you appreciate so that you can address things like response times, getting to something, which are higher than they ought to be. The crime rate, which we have seen grow year over year for some of the crimes. So it's something you have to make a priority and avoid this false choice that City Hall seems to have made, that it's a win or lose proposition.
Representative, so how do you balance the safety needs of the city with improving the culture at APD and holding officers accountable for misconduct?
I want them to have the best training possible. We've been retooling our training. I want them to not just watch a video and check a box. I want them to have the best training possible. And they want that too. I learned years ago, I was on the first police monitor board appointed by Mayor Garcia. And I learned up close and personal at that time, cops want good cops. They want to be held accountable. A police officer who's having a bad day, or a police officer who didn't know how to interact with the community in a community guardian way as opposed to a warrior way will cause mistrust. So an oversight process will help to build that trust so that someone knows if they had a bad interaction with a police officer, there's a way for me to report that. It's still going to take some courage from the community, and I acknowledge that. But I want them to be able to say, we reported this police officer, we were heard, and that police officer will be a better police officer because he or she was held accountable.
I took some time to look at your legislative records. Now, Mr. Watson, you served as a state senator from 2007 until 2020. Representative Israel, you served in the Texas House of Representatives from 2014 until today. This means there were 3 sessions that you both were serving at the Capitol at the same time. And during those sessions, you two worked on several bills together. But Senator Watson, you authored or co-authored 95 bills that went on to become law. Representative, 24 bills. Tell us about a bill you passed that you believe has had the most positive impact on Austinites, and we'll start with you, Mr. Watson.
Well, that's like asking me what my favorite child. I could go on and on about many that have made a difference, but I guess the one I would point to involves the legislation that allowed for Dell Medical School to become accredited and a part of the finance package that would allow it to get state financing in a better way. That was a key part of what I wanted to do. In addition to that, I would have to add, because we're talking about Health and Human Services, the legislation I passed that had the Dell Medical School become the supervisor of reimagining brain health in our community when I got the money that would allow for the Austin State Hospital to be redone.
Representative.
Ashley, it's not always about bills that you pass. It's about not always about having your name on things. We did really awesome work with our constituents, but I'll give you an example of a bill out of respect for your question. There is one of the first bills that I passed, and it will have helpful ramifications for the future. When I asked Texas Department of Motor Vehicles how many electric vehicles there were on Texas roads, they couldn't answer me. And I said, why not? And they said, because the VIN number doesn't match up, and the VIN number doesn't have engine type. So we drafted a bill and we worked on that, got it passed. And it might sound simple, but now we can calibrate and know exactly how many electric vehicles are on the road now and into the future. So I'm proud of that, because the future of transportation is electric. Some would say it's autonomous, and it's multimodal. So it was an important strategic adjustment to make as we track the modes of transportation in the future.
It is important to be able to fight and stop things, but it's also important to deliver. And I thought she was going to answer a question on a bill that we worked on together. It was a Senate bill, and she was the sponsor in the House, and that was the creation of the Sobriety Center here in Austin, Texas. And that was a really good bill that actually had an impact directly on Austin.
Would you like to respond?
No.
Okay.
I picked a favorite child. I'll stand with that one.
All right, we're going to switch things up a bit and have a series of lightning round questions. So candidates, you are to answer each of these questions with one word. In one word, what is the biggest threat to Austin's success? Representative.
Popularity.
Mr. Watson.
Cost of living.
Should Austin Energy implement another rate increase? Mr. Watson.
No.
No.
The city is using tax dollars to offer incentives to real estate agents and property owners who find housing for people experiencing homelessness. Do you support this program? Representative.
Maybe.
Yes, but it needs to be looked at very carefully.
Okay.
I'm trying to stick to your one word rule.
I appreciate you trying to stick to it. I know it's hard. That's a tough one. Last week, the council approved a deal to move forward with the development of the former Austin American Statesman building on Lady Bird Lake, allowing the developer to get out of including below market housing by paying about $23 million to an affordable housing fund. Was this the right decision, Mr. Watson?
Yes.
No.
Should the city still be offering incentives for businesses and developers to come to Austin? Representative.
Maybe.
Mr. Watson.
I'll go with maybe in certain circumstances.
Mr. Watson, in one word, describe the legislation filed this session to essentially dissolve the city of Austin and create a district.
Wrong.
Representative.
Stupid.
Both good words. If you lose this election, will you run again in 2024, Mr. Watson?
Who knows?
Doubtful.
All right, that concludes our lightning round portion. Thanks for playing. I know it was difficult to answer those.
My wife is listening, so tell me.
I bet. All right, we want to take some questions from our viewers. And just a reminder, you both have 1 minute to respond and 30 seconds for rebuttals. Willow from St. John's asks, what else outside of housing do you plan on doing to help address Austin's affordability problem? Mr. Watson, we'll start with you.
There are two things that I think need to be addressed as part of my plan. One is Austin needs to become the best city in America to raise a child. And what I mean by that is we need to have a real focus on daycare and early childhood development. Child care is the number 2 cost in many households behind the housing cost, and it's not equitable throughout the city of Austin. So part of my plan will be for us to focus on child care so that we can address affordability. The second thing that I would mention that's different than just housing is that I think our economic development paradigm needs to shift from just counting the number of jobs we've created into getting Austinites into those jobs. And I want to start in high school moving people into those jobs so that they'll have more money and more opportunity, career paths, so that they can afford to live in Austin.
Okay. Representative Israel, what else outside of housing do you plan on doing to help address Austin's affordability problem?
Well, Willow, thank you for the question. It's one of the things that I have spent a lot of time on, and that is creative land use. So as we build homes creatively, Willow, we also need to make sure that we are building, rethinking that parcel of land. For example, what was an Austin Energy facility should be row houses for teachers, but it should also be done in a creative, intentional way so that we have a child care facility on it and a pocket park on it, and safe access to transit. It's just less than a minute to the #1 bus and to the Red Line. So we've got to, my short answer is creative land use. Let's be bold, let's be creative. Other cities are talking about this. I want to look back on my time as mayor, and I want folks to say, wow, look at what Austin is doing. That's really cool. Let's take our brains and our smarts and our creativity and our passion for the working men and women of this city, and let's deliver on something real and tangible and life-changing.
Our next viewer question comes from Brian in West Austin. His question is about Project Connect. Given its growing price tag, he wants to know, if elected, will you send it back to voters to vote again on the true cost? And if not, why not? Representative Israel.
We had a vote in 2020, Brian. I respect where you're coming from, but at this point we need to elect elected officials who will look at things with a critical eye and a heart for transit that's going to work for more Austinites. As I've said, Austin is a big-hearted city, and we voted overwhelmingly for Project Connect. But I think we should make sure that we are maximizing that effort moving forward.
And no, I wouldn't send it back. As pointed out, the voters voted for Project Connect. We need to do the best job we can in order to get the voters what they wanted, which was a rail system, an alternative to just being in their cars. It's a mess. We need to recognize that it's a mess. We need to acknowledge that. And then we need to go in, as I said in that previous question, and really scrub the two things that we have, the two variables we have. What is the asset and what's the time frame going to be so that we can deliver?
Actually, I think it makes a difference that I have that lived experience with transit as the president of the Alliance for Public Transportation and someone who worked for a transit engineering company. It's almost been my life's work here in Austin to make sure that we are moving transit initiatives forward. It's been the topic that I spent a lot of time on in the legislature, and we should be in partnership with the Biden administration, which at this moment in time is we have a president who is interested in equity. Transit is equity. Let's make sure that we show that we can be good partners with them and do creative things as we move this project forward.
I will ask, though, because we have spent a lot of time talking about Project Connect in terms of transportation, but what about the folks who want to drive? What are you going to do? What are you proposing to do to help them? Senator Watson.
Well, there's a couple of things we need to be doing. We talked about I-35 a few minutes ago. We also need to be looking at what we're going to do with MOPAC, and there are parts of our city, Circle C being an example, where people feel like they're trapped in their neighborhood because of the traffic on MOPAC. So we need to be also looking at where we make these roads that are so badly congested, make them deliver better. In addition to that, we've got billions of dollars that have been set aside to work on various transit programs. Some of that money, in my view, ought to go to making our roads better in terms of potholes and that kind of thing, but also to making them flow better.
Well, it's similar to the answer I gave you when we last met.
Sure.
I know that there are individuals in this town who would love to ride the bus. They want the Dillo, they want another circulator, they want a transit system that makes sense for them, even if it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because they don't have to take the kids to soccer. By having a really amazing transit system, we are saying more people will either will work from home in a flexible work environment, or will take the bus more frequently, and that's more people that are out of your way. Microtransit is an answer. That's a smaller version of a bus, like a shuttle, so that it's like an Uber. And Cap Metro is experimenting with that right now in East and Northeast Austin. This is transportation. The future of transportation involves technology, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that.
Okay. Our final viewer question of the night comes from Charles, who lives in Oak Hill. He writes, Austin prides itself as the live music capital of the world. What is your plan to support musicians in this town? Some gigs are still paying what they paid 20 years ago. Mr. Watson.
Well, there's a couple of things that I think we need to do. One is, we've talked about it from the very beginning of this, and that is we need to make Austin a more affordable place so that many of those musicians that are having to leave don't have to leave. We also need to expand the resources related to health care. HAM is a wonderful outfit that does great work, but we can do more to make it easier for our musicians to be able to afford to stay in this town. And then I think we're going to have to look at maybe developing like a conservancy where we buy and put into a conservancy properties that are, the properties that we want to always keep as music venues, so that we can keep the price of that property down, still have those music venues in Austin, and be able to pay the musicians more. And the final thing I'll say about that is we ought to be working with local businesses so that they're utilizing this great talent more than we do. Representative.
Well, throughout this campaign, which we launched in January, I have had the amazing honor of engaging with musicians and all different kinds. And as I said before, if we don't move urgently on housing and creative land use, the live music capital will move to Bastrop, Texas, or someplace else. So we've got to move intentionally and urgently on housing. And I've heard it from various musicians. Got the support of the Tierras, Little Joe, Ruben Ramos, longtime musicians who not only see a Latina who's moving intently, but they also know that I'm for the working men and women of this city, and that certainly includes our musicians.
We thank our viewers so much for submitting those questions for us tonight. You know, Austin has long had a contentious relationship with the state's leadership. You both know this intimately. Mm-hmm. Now, the council passes ordinances, and then the governor signs laws overriding and undoing those very ordinances. So what will you do to ensure that the community-driven policies the council passes don't get overturned by state lawmakers? Representative Israel.
It is exacerbating. I get it. We become a political piñata. What I will commit to the voters is that although I am a Democrat and I'm a proud Democrat, I also know I don't want to engage with the other leaders, whoever they might be, and have wars on Twitter. I think it's a waste of time, and it's a joke. So if I see something happening that is truly an Austin value that we need to stand up for, there will be time for me to stand up for that. Women's bodily autonomy, for example, that's coming down the tube. The opportunity to simply pick up the phone and call 463-2000 and say, I need to speak to the governor and his team and his chief of staff. Let's have a grown-up conversation. I have a good reputation of working with my colleagues in the House and in the Senate, and I don't want to play into the circus that can become Austin bashing. I want to make sure that we're moving in a productive way for the citizens of Austin.
Yeah. Just curious, when was the last time you talked to Governor Abbott?
It's been the last legislative session when he came onto the House floor. I was shocked that he knew me. He called me out by name. I was kind of scared, like, hey, hi, how you doing? But he was not in a hurry to meet me. He was there as just a courtesy on the House floor.
Senator Watson, before you answer that question, last time you talked to Governor Abbott?
My memory is that when we were in the pandemic and he created the committee to look at reopening Texas, and I was the dean of the Hobby School of Public Affairs at the University of Houston.
Okay. And so tell us, how will you ensure that the community-driven policies Austin passes are not overturned by the legislature?
Well, first of all, I've got experience with this because when I was mayor the first time, Austin was getting bashed at the legislature, and we were able to bring a lot of peace to that situation. Some of it is, as Celia points out, you don't need to get into tweet fights. We don't need to be creating unnecessary enemies. And the other thing is a recognition that it's okay to not make unnecessary enemies, but create relationships, and like I did in the Senate, where I was able to have the kind of success that I was able to have there. The other thing I'd point out is we are the state capital. Austin's the state capital. We don't sometimes embrace that the way I think we should. We ought to be willing to recognize that to be a governing body, the city council, the mayor and city council, we have to deal with other jurisdictions, and we benefit from being the state capital. And then the last thing I say is, even so, we need to stand up for our Austin values.
Actually, as you know, I'm the only person in this race with a stated policy around reproductive rights, and that is an Austin value. It is a Texan value if our state leaders would acknowledge that. There is a potential for legislation to start moving forward that will tell the big corporations, the major employers here in Austin, that you cannot take a woman who needs to get an abortion, that you cannot take her outside the state. That is barbaric. Women in this city are angry. We are not just disappointed, we're angry. So I put that policy out because I needed to make a statement to the women and those who need to get an abortion, that I will stand with you. And this is an example of legislation where I would need to work in partnership with our corporate partners in the city who have their own cultural value that they have set to say to women, don't worry, we got your back. And there are some radical elements of the legislature who would love to say otherwise. So there is an opportunity for us to speak up, and there's an opportunity for us to work with our other allied interests, like corporate partners.
Yeah, I want to say something about that because I agree. And in fact, when I was in the Senate, I worked closely with corporate partners to beat back the bathroom bill at the time. But I also agree, and I have a strong record, and I want to be clear about this, of standing for the reproductive rights and abortion rights in this state. And I'm very pleased that former Senator Wendy Davis has endorsed me. I do believe that is an Austin value, and it's one that the mayor needs to stand up for.
Okay. We're going to do something a little different now. We will allow each candidate to ask their opponent a question. And to our viewers, this does not come as a surprise. The candidates have had time to prepare their questions. Representative Israel, you may ask your question first.
Kirk, my question is about an endorsement that you received very recently and support that you're getting. Matt McCowiak is the chairman of the Travis County Republican Party and the head of Save Austin Now. He has ridiculed your friend and our friend, Wendy Davis. I do not see him as a person who will bring us together on issues that the next mayor will have to work on: housing, affordability, racial justice. The same could be said of the Republican billionaire donors who have given to your PAC, who have also given to Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn. Would you renounce that endorsement at this time?
You know, I won't, and the reason is this. Probably for the same reason you wouldn't renounce the endorsement of the former vice chair of the Travis County Republican Party and the former president of the Travis County Republican Club and a leader in the Travis County Republican Party, who was one of the sponsors of a fundraiser for you. Being mayor requires us, I don't know, I haven't talked to Matt McCowiak, haven't asked him for anything, but the truth of the matter is, being mayor of Austin requires us to work with lots of different people. And I disagree with him very strongly, and he knows I disagree with him, and I'm sure he disagrees with me on many things. But when you say you're going to vote for me, and that's what he said he's going to vote for me. You made it sound like a more formal endorsement, but when he says he's going to vote for me, he's voting for me. I'm not voting for him. And my guess is we're going to disagree, but there are only two people in this race. There are only two people in this race. And so if you're going to participate in the Austin mayor's race, regardless of your political philosophy, you're going to need to pick one of the two of us.
There is a distinction, however, between Mr. Borgelt, who's my friend and my supporter, who's active with the Republican Party, and Mr. McCowiak and your mega donors who are part of the division and have I don't see them being helpful as we are trying to work through these big issues that the next mayor is going to have to work through.
And Representative, that's one of the problems that I see in your running for mayor. You don't see the potential for some people to be helpful. You see a division and not see any ability to hear those folks, listen, and maybe be able to even learn, but also bring people together. And building consensus is going to be a key part.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
Mr. Watson, is now your opportunity to ask a question of Representative Israel.
And my question is a pretty simple one. You indicate that you were able to get along well in the House and were successful in the House. Why is it that in your last session you were unable to pass any bills?
It is no secret that I worked very, very hard to flip the House in 2020. You and I have had a lot of conversations about that. I'm proud of my legislative record, and it's disappointing to me that you're suggesting that my value is only measured by the bills that I passed or the bills that had my name on them, because I'm very proud of being able to serve my constituents. I am very proud of the committee work that I did. I have helped pregnant inmates. I have helped pedestrians be in a safer space. I have helped reroute trucks off of I-35 in a pilot program. I have stood up for immigrants. I have stood up for trans kids who just want to play basketball, for God's sake. My voice has been important. I'm proud of my legislative record. And it's unbecoming, Kirk, for you to attack my legislative record, and the only reason you're attacking is because you found yourself on the losing end on election night.
No, you know, it is important. I agree that it's important to fight, to be able to fight, to be able to stand up for the things that you believe in, but it's also important to be able to deliver. And one of the key ways of delivering in the legislature is by being able to pass bills that help your constituents. And as your previous question was, name one bill that you're proudest of that actually benefited Austin. There wasn't one until I reminded, and there were 0 bills passed. So it is an indicator, and it's also an indicator of how you get along in a place where we've also talked about needing to be able to build relationships so that you can get Austin things done.
It's an insult to someone that you used to work with and a friendship that you used to value.
Oh, well, I disagree with you.
Okay. It is now time for our closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to share their final thoughts with our viewers, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So, Representative, we will begin with you.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you to your viewers. I am on an amazing journey. It has been the honor of my lifetime to serve in the House of Representatives and serve with honor and distinction with a good reputation. I never could have imagined when I came here in 1982 from El Paso, Texas, that I would have an opportunity to serve, but there's a spirit of Austin that I call upon frequently. There's a spirit of Austin that said to me as a Latina, as a member of the LGBT community, you're welcome here. That spirit of Austin is at risk. It's that same spirit of Austin that gave me the courage to say to myself, Celia, I think you should run for office. It's a spirit of Austin that gave me the courage to stand up for trans kids, and gave me the courage to stand up for state employees, and gave me the courage to stand up for women whose bodily autonomy was being taken away every 2-year cycle. I have the strength, I have the commitment, I have the heart. I'm not running for myself. I'm running because the women and men who are driving this economy are no longer welcome in this economy. I want to do something about it, and I hope I can earn your support. Thank you.
Mr. Watson, your closing statement.
Thank you very much. We're all pretty frustrated. Let's just face it, the honest truth is that City Hall is not taking care of basics, things like what we've talked about tonight, housing, affordability, the homeless population, crime, traffic. I've lived in this town since 1981, and I love it. I love the people in this town. But we have a lot that we love about Austin that's at risk because we're not focusing on the fundamentals. And we need to have a mayor that can start working with immediacy, with a sense of urgency that we don't have any more time to waste and we can't screw around. I've asked for there to be a comparison in this race, a comparison of the records of the two candidates, because while I am proud of a lot of those accomplishments, they also demonstrate what the future can be if we have somebody with a proven track record of success that has the ability to bring people together, has shown it over and over again, and can address the big issues and the big challenges that we face. Austin is no longer becoming a big city. It is a big city. It is a big city with big city challenges that we can't wait any longer to address. We need to be addressing them, and we need to be sure we're addressing them with someone that can bring that success. So I thank you for watching, and I would appreciate your vote.
Mr. Watson, Representative Israel, we thank you both so much for participating in the KVUE News Austin mayoral debate.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you to your viewers.
Yeah. And to our viewers, we thank you for tuning in tonight. Remember, if you missed any of tonight's debate, you can rewatch it on KVUE.com, KVUE Plus, and the KVUE YouTube channel. Early voting is happening right now. You have until December 9th, that's this Friday, to cast your ballot early. Or you can vote on Election Day, Tuesday, December 13th. Now, for more information on where to cast your ballot, you can check out the KVUE Voter Guide. It's at KVUE.com/vote-Texas. You can also text the word VOTE to the number on your screen there, 512-459-9442, and we'll send you a link right to your phone with that information. Now remember, calling that number is not going to work. You're going to have to send a text message. We again thank you for watching the KVUE News Austin mayoral runoff debate. Now it is time to vote Texas.